All right. Hey, everybody. Pat Rigsby here again with another episode of the Fitness Business School. And today I have what has turned into my big annual podcast of the year with my good friend, Eric Cressey. So welcome.
Thanks, buddy. Always fun to be here. It's January excitement every year.
Yes, this is me trying to kick off the fitness year, and you probably in your busiest time of the year at the facilities, and and then juggle with what you have going on as a dad, and same here. It's a full time, so I'm always grateful and appreciative that you make a little bit of time to hang out with me here.
I love it. You were at basketball tonight. I was at gymnastics, so we're in good company.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I feel like I have historically started off with kind of just a state of the union in your world, like what's happening at CSP first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the big thing is growth. That's always a good thing, for better or worse. So we are kind of growing exponentially, and I think the biggest thing that we recognize about our facility is that, you can't just keep growing and growing and growing without making adjustments, either your business structure, your building, whatever it may be. And I think, when you rent, you try to find flexible lease terms so you can grow into more space or find a space that you can adjust. Like in our case, like we literally had no place to put all of our staff. We kind of just, moved in here in 2019. COVID happened. Everybody on the planet moved to Florida. So effectively, we're looking for more ways that we could do that. And so we started out as a 10,000 square foot gym, kind of adjacent to a 9,000 square foot baseball operations building that, was owned by the city of Palm Beach Gardens that we worked through with a public-private partnership. So we would have like kind of preferred access to it for our baseball activity stuff. So, it was 19,000 square feet of buildings, 10,000 was ours, 9,000 was theirs that we would use. So long story short, back in February, we bought that space from them. And we bought it because it's close enough that we can actually connect it to our existing gym. So what we'll create is a just over 19,000 square foot, gym. It'll include a physical therapy clinic. It'll include all of our staff office space, an indoor, kind of event space that could be everything from a lab to hosting seminars to running, yoga inside if we have rain delays or anything like that. Just more space to put people, even just like almost like a locker room for players' stuff, which always seems to just find its way into walkways and things like that with how our facility is structured. And then, so the demo actually will kind of initiate on that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And we expect those two buildings will be connected, by mid to late June, when all is said and done. But to make it more interesting, we had to then recreate the baseball operations building. So the first week of February, we opened up our new 12,000 square foot baseball operations building, which is about 50 yards away. But it's, this is alongside our, the stadium field and the turf and all that stuff. So it's got 5 cages, 3 mounds, major league caliber. It's got all the bells and whistles in terms of tech and all that stuff, and very much equipped for like major league caliber hitters, not just like, you've been in the baseball world long enough to know, like you do a cage for a little leaguer, it's very different than what you would do for a guy who's hitting a ball 115 miles an hour. So when all is said and done, by July 1st, the expectation is we'll have about 31,000 square feet of indoor space, plus what we have for outdoor amenities. And I joke every time I go outside right now, I spend $5,000 and because somebody has a new idea on what we need to add or anything like that. And I'm sure once it's complete, we'll live in it and there'll be something that we hate, need to fix or whatever it is. But, it's the theme is growth, scale, understanding what is and isn't a good investment and all that. So it's been a lot of meetings with contractors on top of, the normal day to day of training athletes and, managing staff and all that.
I will say it's fun to listen to you talk through this because I have great recollection of standing in like the office area in Massachusetts, and you kind of just talking through the original idea of doing something in Florida. And so getting to kind of witness from just the initial conversations you were having and talking about that stuff, and then making the initial move to, like Jupiter, and then kind of on and over and bigger. It's been impressive. And I think just probably you could probably do a Harvard case study on the adaptability of how
What it takes.
how you've operated through the
Yeah.
pandemic, through
Yeah.
growth. Um, so with that being said, I mean, I think I could probably ask you a million questions, right? Like, but how do you balance the and maybe balance is a utopian word here, right? The responsibilities with the Yankees
Mhm.
and the growth of this, because I mean, you just alluded to this, the time with contractors. I mean, it's basically a second job, this renovation expansion on top of what's already a pretty
Yeah.
full plate. Working with athletes.
Yeah. I think where we are a little bit fortunate with this one is this isn't like a remote job site. Like, I can do my entire job and I can scoot outside and I can check on a building like in under 2 minutes. Like it's right there. So that part has made it a lot easier. Obviously, you got to like, go to the architect's office and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, it comes down to having really good people you trust. Like the number one on that list is my wife, Anna, who is at all those meetings and, kind of invests in all that stuff. And I think we've gotten pretty good over the years. I mean, our kids are 10, 10, and 5. We were kind of joking offline, like we're like a shuttle service more than I think we are parents some days. Like it's, gymnastics, it's dance, it's softball, it's, all these different things that they have going on top of, get them to school and all that stuff too. So, we do have a full-time nanny. We don't have family like to help us out down here in Florida. So we are a little exposed in that regard, but, I think it's a moving target, and you want to embrace those years where your kids actually do want to hang out with you before they hit the teenage years and they're not interested in it. But, the Yankees one has always worked really, really well just because it's kind of a perfect opposite schedule to what I do, with respect to kind of the off season side of things. And they very much work in parallel. To be honest, the hardest months are usually November, December, when you look at just what actually happens in a Major League Baseball off season with, pro scouting and, free agent medical stuff and trades and getting guys going their off-season programs and, checking in with them where appropriate and all that stuff. So I actually joke, people are shocked at this. They always think it's going to be like the season, everything like, no, the busiest month of the year for me is actually November into December. Winter meetings are happening. So that's when there's a lot of like action on the roster management side of things. So we went to the World Series this year. So which is awesome, but at the same time, it's even awesomer if you win. But on top of that, it's more travel added to the end of the year and stuff like that. So there's some things to work through, but it works really well. I have a ton of flexibility. Like I can kind of go where I need to go in the director role, based on what I think the organization needs. So sometimes that might be a minor league affiliate. Sometimes that maybe our big league stadium. Sometimes it may be a trip to our player development complex in Tampa, and sometimes it may be, hunkering down at home and, spending 15 hours reviewing amateur draft candidates. So I think the secret is just like understanding what needs to get done and allocating the time to whatever is most important, which is, it's honestly no different than any other business, right?
So one of the things that has always impressed me about I guess, having known you for so long is how you just we're kind of a sponge to almost all disciplines, right? Like it's not just, Eric knows kinesiology, Eric knows exercise science. You were as adept at any of the business stuff as I was, or marketing stuff as I was. And I'm like, this is supposed to be like my specialty. So I'm curious, like, okay, you've been with the Yankees for a while now. Obviously, that's a storied franchise, but it's an incredible business as well. What are a couple of the things that you've taken away from that's helped you in your private sector side?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. A couple things. One, I would definitely say like you have to protect your brand. Like what can be built over the course of generations, you have to, you can lose overnight. And I think our organization does a really, really good job of like, being very progressive, but at the same time being authentic, having an eye for like what kind of reputation was built and really paying attention to a lot of that stuff. And I actually love that side of things. That there is a very authentic feel about it. And it's everything from, having, like the the stars of, bygone eras who are back and, being around the field. And that part's obviously very, very cool. But just, there's certain traditions that they're very, very adherent to. And we also know, like, being one of the most storied franchises in the world, there is a massive, under a microscope. There's a lot of focus on you. So you have to do things the right way. You can't cut corners, stuff like that. And I think, I'm fortunate, like they're very, very meticulous when they go through hiring processes, and, we don't hire loose cannons. We hire people that want to work as part of a really cool organization. So like, I'm lucky. Like I think one of the things that I really learned, kind of in my previous time as baseball is you want to know who directly you report to, so that you can actually, get things done. And, I'm lucky. I report to amazing director of baseball operations and Matt Ferry, and, he reports directly to Brian Cashman, for a number of different departments that are underneath that umbrella. And it's awesome knowing you have a guy, you're going to get him on the first ring. He's going to advocate for you. He's going to help with stuff. Cause you never want, to have bottlenecks that interfere with your ability to be progressive. So I think Cash has done a really, really good job of, structuring it appropriately so that we can basically break down doors and do cool things and do it, pretty expeditiously as well. So it's a cool kind of world to work in.
So, I'm going to kind of bounce back. I know I kind of toggle between the different lanes that you operate in. So, thinking back to the early days of, I guess it was even CP before it was CSP.
Yeah.
And, there was a lot of kind of getting the flywheel turning, a lot of content production, a lot of the front facing stuff that way. Mm-hmm. And then over time, it seems like, more of your job, at least from the outside looking in. So please correct me on this anywhere I misstep, is finding the right people, creating an environment to thrive. Is, maybe the creating awareness about CSP isn't as big a deal as it might have been, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever. So, can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, I think, your point is a really good one. Like early on, it's all about, making people, you want top of mind awareness. You want to generate leads, to actually put butts in the seats and, and pay your bills and stuff like that. And I think you develop a pretty good local and national reputation. I don't say that stuff takes care of itself. You still have to be active. You still have to put yourself out there. And that's all. I think much more it's way harder to manage growth than it is to start a business. And, I don't want to belittle anybody that's starting a business, because I think it's a super noble initiative, and I've done it a number of times myself, and I look back fondly on those times. But, really the harder question is like, hey, do I want to put another 2.5 million into this business, right? Do I want to hire 5 more staff members, or do I want to stay boutique and, keep this a little bit more tight knit? Like, those are the things that you really have to really struggle with. Nobody gets in this business. My business partner Pete always jokes about this. Like, nobody opens the gym because they like, I want 15 employees. Like, it kind of just happens. You wake up one day and you look around and there are a lot of people there. But I maintain this. I've said this a million times on podcasts and articles and stuff. Like, putting my name on this facility was still the worst decision of my career. Something that we're too deep on, we can't go back on. Like, I don't want credit. I have no interest in being like the center of attention or anything like that. Like, for me, it's all about our athletes. I'd rather, build up staff members and allow them to do cool stuff. And it's pretty awesome. Like, I had 4 staff members that went to the University of Houston this weekend without me, put our best foot forward, did an amazing job, like, evaluating, coaching up some of their baseball staff and players. Those guys have gone to, University of Alabama, University of Virginia, some, very storied schools, and they've represented our brand great. So, like, to me, that's a sign of success, is that we haven't just been a training facility, been a teaching facility. We've grown like really, really cool coaches. Andrew Lissey's been with us since he was a college athlete. And then he, became an intern, then joined our staff, became internship coordinator. He's our most tenured coach. Like, Andrew's personal trainer, Justin Verlander, he's going on the road with Matt Fitzpatrick. He's doing awesome stuff. We share an office together. So it's just been cool seeing his growth. And, like, I'm sure you're very similar. You've had a lot of, mentees over the years that have thrived and done some cool stuff. And I think that's way more fulfilling. I'm not interested in like doing more interviews, more look at Eric. It just isn't what fulfills me these days. I'd rather, celebrate their successes and grow the business that way.
Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of look back and see, who was a client, who attended events, who were
Yeah.
franchisees even, and even dating back further, like who
Yeah.
played for me way back then. And I think that maybe the more seasoned I get, maybe that's the right way to put it, is
Yeah.
the more that stuff really kind of takes the top shelf in everything. I mean, so I appreciate that a great deal. So,
And so selfishly, if they're elite at what they do, it allows me to do other stuff. If everything has to, every evaluation, every program has to go to Eric, like we're doing far more in like the corporate partnership space. Obviously, like I do a lot in terms of content creation, which indirectly contributes to lead generation, awareness of the brand, and stuff like that. Like, and I have to be around to like decide, like, is this an opportunity we should pursue? Is this something we should decline? Because there's just kind of more and more, I want to call it noise, but just more and more interest on that front, and you kind of need to be able to take some time to separate out what is and isn't a good decision for your business and your brand.
yeah, the kind of ladder that the nose climb over time, right? What was a good opportunity
Yeah.
12 years ago is so, I mean, it wouldn't even be on the radar now.
Yeah. It's changed pretty dramatically over the years. And I mean, that's a good thing. I think that's something you want from any business, is that I guess your lens of success should change over the course of time.
So, I mean, you spoke to your team going off site and doing things. I mean, I think about the different ways that you've kind of made a dent outside your four walls, or even brought people in over time. And there have been books and information products, and all the free intellectual property you share, going off and doing that. And I mean, I've had the good fortune to be a student at a course on baseball, and I've had the good fortune to come and speak at events. Or are you, with this expanded space, I mean, is that something that's on the radar again, or is that something like, that may have been a previous part of the things that we
1,000,000%, yes. I'm sorry, are we cutting out a little bit?
Yeah, I
Sorry, we're
think
cutting a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest. Are we right? One of my biggest goals in doing this renovation is bringing seminars back. They kind of went away a little bit during COVID. Honestly, the facility was just so busy that we didn't have like space to really host events like that and be able to shut the facility down and stuff like that. So that is a really, really big goal. It's an opportunity to, I think, deliver a better product to our clients first and foremost. But if it also gives us the space we need to allow our staff space to move around and actually have a little bit of a quiet space where they can go and take a phone call or do some work without getting interrupted all the time. But also, if we can host a seminar, we can bring like a yoga class indoors when it's pouring outside or something like that. I think that's ideal. It just gives you some versatility in your walls. But it sounds crazy to say. You never think like, I'm going to build a building and then figure out what to do with it. There is a little bit of that now, just because I think it's an overcorrection to us realizing that we were so short on space when we got in here. That's a 10,000 square foot building. It's not small, but like you don't appreciate that if your business grows by like 30%, like you're going to have a line at the bathroom all the time. So we have 2 bathrooms, 2 showers. We have the MLB drug testing guy who comes in a couple times a week in the off season, and there's a line of 4 guys that are in line to basically take their drug tests. Like it's stuff you never really fathom is going to take place, but it can actually kind of cripple the flow of a facility a little bit more. So while we're doing this facility, we're thinking about like, all right, where do I take a quiet phone call? All right, where is that 17-year-old kid in dirty shoes going to walk? Like, what's the flow of it? How do we want to make sure he checks in? Like, okay, if we want someone who's on crutches that just had ACL surgery and they're going to go to physical therapy, what's the easiest path for them to get to the PT clinic? There are all these things that these mistakes that we've made that we want to, basically be able to rectify as we get into new space. So it's something, I bounced around on the question a little bit. I think I focus mostly on the seminar part, but I think that gives rise to a lot more of the information products, which, to be honest, I've kind of gotten out of that game. I have not been, writing and doing books and products and things like that nearly as much, just because the facility has grown so much. And, that was kind of like one of the handshake agreements with my wife when when I took this Yankees, job, like, we're not going to travel for seminars and things like that, do perform better. And maybe we host something at the facility. Maybe, I did a little bit this fall at some sports medicine conferences, but I did not do like the full weekend trip in Kansas City and LA and Seattle. Like, that wasn't something that I was chasing anymore, because I committed my resources and my intention elsewhere. So, where that might come back, just more on our terms, where maybe people come to us and, we reincarnate the baseball mentorships and some of that stuff.
Well, yeah, I think there's obviously some real benefit to being able to bring more people on site, expose more people to what you do, and make connections that way. I mean, you guys have always had such a robust internship program that has created, I'm sure, good team members for you along the way. So, yeah. So, you mentioned that, and I think, how that was that handshake agreement between you guys. I think that's something that anybody listening in, doesn't really matter where they came from, accepting that, there are different chapters, or there are different seasons that we all go through. So, I mean, big expansion. What else are you looking forward to as far as the next chapter for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I love my Yankees role. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I've enjoyed it a ton. I anticipate, continue that as long as they'll have me, and obviously with maybe seal the deal and actually win the World Series when next time we get there. So that's certainly a goal. But that's something that in a lot of ways revitalized me. Being part of like winning, being part of a team, trying to basically be challenged to build something special that is just different than what I'm used to doing in the private sector. So I've really enjoyed that side of things. I think the other thing too is like just in the private sector, I think, we're interesting. Like, you see some of the jerseys behind us. We've had a lot of these like, veteran pitchers who, guys that have, thrown 200 innings over and over and over again, and won Cy Youngs and things like that. And we've got some really good young arms that excite me. So it's cool to kind of see, seeing some of these younger guys, what I saw with like, Kluber circa 2013, 2014, when like, they kind of come out of the woodwork and start doing some really cool stuff. Obviously it was around Max and JV as well. So I think a lot of that excitement is really, really cool. You just kind of even seeing some of these kids that have been with us since they were 14, 15, who are now like big leaguers and establishing their careers and all that stuff. I mean, baseball's in a really challenging time though. There's a lot of injuries, so the industry is evolving really, really aggressively, both for the better and the worse. So I think we need to be at the forefront of it. So we certainly invest a lot of time and resources. And so the podcast has been a platform that I think has been really, really good. I think in general, people's attention spans are maybe a little bit shorter with respect to long form written content. The podcast, myself included, like people just like to listen to it in the car and try to get exposure to education and different resources wherever they can. So that's been one that, we actually just recorded our 200th episode this past week. So we got another season going on, and we're doing like a shorter version every Friday morning too. So, the goal is to get a lot more episodes out this year, just because I think that's a platform that's served me well. And like I mentioned, some different corporate partnerships, stuff in that space that, we've had New Balance, we've done some stuff in that space, companies like Mark Pro and AG1 and all that stuff. But a few more irons in the fire that I think I'm really excited about, companies that have really cool relationships to the baseball world that maybe we can help to bring to center. Equinox has me on the health advisory board as well. So kind of doing a little bit of hopefully leading from the forefront with respect to the industry as a whole. So just a lot of exciting things, never enough hours in the day to do it. But, this is why I have a very patient wife. We have a nanny that's a big help, and, hopefully I'm getting better at actually like organizing a schedule. But that if you want to talk resolutions, one of my biggest biggest proposal is to really lock in my schedule for myself. Like that's something I need to be better for. Like with how much we have going on, like the routine needs to be way more consistent. Like I need to know exactly what I'm doing 6, 8, 10 weeks in advance. And we do that a little bit with respect to people wanting to come from out of town for the facility. But I caught myself way too much in 2024 at the end of the day, being like, all right, I got 30 minutes to lift before I have to go pick up the girls at gymnastics or something like that. And I'm a miserable guy to be around when I'm not exercising. So making that a little bit more of a priority is important because it can kind of creep into other people's hands if you're not careful.
So when do you kick off spring training with the Yankees?
Report is February 11th. So a little bit early this year. We get a March 27th opening day. So they moved everything up a couple days on us.
So I think, I'm curious. Okay, this time of year, it's I assume a very heavy kind of pro feel in the facility.
Yeah.
What's the traffic flow kind of change like from professional off season to spring to summer? What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our facility, busiest month is December. Second busiest is January. Third is June. Fourth is July. You very much know like April and September will be our slowest. Sometimes August and September are right about the same. So there's generally a gradual build: October, November, December, January. Like it always bumps up every year. December is our busiest month ever in terms of revenue and foot traffic. So you really you're prepping above all else for the time when like your high school, your college, your pro, and your adult clients are all there at the same time. So a busy day, we'll see 350 people come through the facility across all those: hitting, pitching, strength and conditioning, physical therapy, massage therapy, all that. So it's a lot of people to coordinate, a lot of schedules to meticulously organize. But I think, we know what our busy seasons are. Like, there are times where we may have some seasonal employees helping out. We know, what points in the year where we might conceivably be a little bit short staffed that we have to prepare for way in advance. And then we also have times when we know we're kind of hyper staffed relative to the volume that's in place. And those are times where we buckle down. We do way more staff education. We may prioritize facility renovations, things along those lines.
Gotcha. So, complete shift. Like how is juggling, gymnastics, and softball and everything else as a dad? Because I mean, you're kind of doing it all. So
it's hard, man. It's hard, and you know why it's extra hard is like I'm kind of on the periphery of them. Like with my schedule, the softball, I'll help. I'll be kind of like a bench coach, like, just basically making sure everybody knows when they're bats. I'll kind of be a glorified bat boy and stuff. But, when I'm at practice, like I'll volunteer, I'll help out, I'll be a base coach or, play catch, throw ground balls, whatever it is. Gymnastics is actually very different because I know nothing about gymnastics. I just know that kids get involved in it really, really young. The volume is absolutely excessive. The number of hours that you do it is actually absolutely excessive. So I've kind of, without even necessarily asking for it, it's kind of just happened. I've kind of become gymnastics triage because I have a really strong connection of medical professionals down here. So the number of knees and low backs and wrists and ankles and things like that you see, it's astronomical. So I just literally this weekend, I sent 2 of my daughter's friends to like a pediatric spine specialist. He's seeing them both on Thursday. I was like texting him their radiology reports, all this like stuff I do for like baseball elbows and shoulders. Like now I'm just doing it for all like our parent friends and all that stuff. So gymnastics has been eye-opening. I think when I got into the baseball community, I said, all right, this is a world that, it's very underserved. Like there's something we can make a big difference. And like, I'm kind of like treading water, being very, very cautious about like volunteering to help too much, just because I could see it becoming something that I couldn't necessarily manage. Like if we actually wanted to start training gymnasts at the gym and all that stuff, like our daughters come in and work out with mommy and all that stuff. So been in the works with some staff members, kind of like leading a little group of, some of these younger kids and just teaching them how to cross train a little bit more appropriately and prepare them for the craziness. But I've heard swimming can kind of be like this. I know, there's some other sports that tend to, they tend to specialize really, really early, which I don't really agree with, but it's a lot. It's very eye-opening. So I'm learning as a gymnastics dad as I go. We had our first meet on Saturday, and I was I was, 9 hours on an uncomfortable high school gymnasium, bleacher seat. And I learned a lot though.
Yeah, from my observations and all the kids that we've been around and siblings and all that stuff, it seems like gymnastics has always been the craziest, and
Yeah.
swimming was a close second. So
Yeah. I feel bad for like the swimming and the hockey parents the most because the mornings are so early. Like everybody's fighting for pool and ice time. Like, it's unbelievable what, when we hear about kids going to 5 a.m. practices on school days and stuff like that. So God bless them for doing it. But I'm glad my girls, chose something where we get to sleep a little bit more.
yeah, that's good. So all right, and clearly, I'm terrible about this. I didn't prep you with anything. I know when I got to be on your
All right.
podcast, like prep questions,
Oh,
and
you're good.
I'm just off the cuff here.
I like it.
So over the last year, I mean, have there been any new things that have kind of come on your radar, new things that you've really, I mean, whether it's just a new perspective on something, a new thing that you studied, a new book, anything that's come on your radar that's really caught your interest?
I mean, I think there's certainly a lot in the training space, things that we've become, just more aware of, particularly in the sports medicine realm, is kind of baseball injuries have kind of spiraled. I think I'm more, I think back, you always talked about try to deliver 10 times more value than you could ever charge. Like that you probably wrote that in 2007, 2008. I mean, I bet I read that from one of your newsletters before you ever met up for the first time. And I think about that so much. Best example I can give you, we have an NFL client was doing a home gym, building a beautiful new house of his dreams, kind of like what he always wanted. And, he had asked me just about like the gym layout. He'd had like a, kind of a concierge gym company pull it together. 44K was the quote, which doesn't seem outrageous for a gym. And then I went and I looked at it. I was like, $75 for an ab wheel. All right. $220 for barbell clamps. Like, what are we doing? I went and I looked at it and I was like, dude, I can fix this. Just let me take this over. I made some phone calls. We literally got him the like functional home gym, like called Erin to perform better. She went through all this stuff and I just saved him 21 grand in 2 hours. And it's probably short money to him. It would be a lot more to other people. And it's a beautiful house and all that stuff. But I'm like, I didn't charge him a penny for it. Somebody's been super loyal to us. Great dude. Like, love him to death, and I looked at that. I was like, there's so many people that just look at an opportunity like that to like try to extract value. People, how you talk about value addition versus value extraction. I think one of the things I've looked at is like, how can we add value to our experiences? I've realized I need to spend a lot more time in season on the phone, calling and checking in on some of our guys just to make sure they're on a good path. More guys like coming back and like just venting early in the off season about what didn't go well. From a performance standpoint, it's like, man, we could have troubleshot this in July. We didn't have to wait till October to have the hard conversation. So I think there's that side of things. Just I mentioned like access to orthopedics and stuff like that. Like just being able to get a family in for, like we had a family that came down with a son with some stuff going on, and he was from Toronto, and you can't get an MRI in Canada. Sports medicine is really, really hard with the universal healthcare. We got him a cash pay MRI next door on 12 hours notice for under $300. Like it's something like that is like a really big difference maker. So I've really worked hard to build that medical network, and just put us in a good position to be able to get people quick access to expertise. And I think it's really served us well. So kind of a cool thing that's been, I think it's always been just something we did, but I think I've put a lot more time into thinking about how we can deliberately go out of our way to help people out. We did like a strategic partnership with Yeti. They've been amazing to do, and like they sent us just a kind of a bunch of Yeti mugs, and like I give one to every one of our major league guys that buys their first house. It's like, all right, here's your coffee cup for your first day in your house. Like something like that goes a long way. I gave out like 6 of them in the last month and a half. So it's just a cool thing to have, a cool way to add a little more value to their experience. So we always try to do that.
I think that, I mean, all of that's, I think, incredible. I think so many people overlook the experiential part of this. And this is, saying this is pretty broad, but it's not just this transaction of, hey, come here and, train with us or whatever else. I mean, they're investing their trust in you. I mean, there's certainly an opportunity cost, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
using over all other alternatives, but something that you mentioned there that maybe we could talk through for a minute,
Sure.
because I am very much on this train of problem solving. Like what you said, okay, we could have troubleshot this. I see so many people that do distance coaching, online training, whatever you'd like to call it, right? I mean, it kind of all boils down to that same concept, whether somebody comes and trains with you, like does an assessment with you and goes off and does
Yeah.
stuff remote or whatever. And if I think about like kind of where people's bottlenecks are,
Yeah.
it's that it's like real time problem solving. So, you don't go too far off the rails,
Yeah.
or, you don't lose whatever kind of progress you made or whatever. So, I mean, you've had as many people as anybody in in some iteration of that coming in, doing an assessment. You guys program from a distance. I mean, in some ways, I guess what you do with the Yankees, even probably,
Yeah.
you know,
It goes all over the country.
yeah. So, um, what would, so, I mean, just off the cuff again, I didn't prep this or anything. Like, what would be some problem solving suggestions you might have for somebody that's working, somebody in more of that kind of
The online space.
face-to-face fashion?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, like I would definitely say scheduled check-ins are really, really helpful. Don't assume that people are always going to hyper communicate. You'll have people that'll be like, they'll give you a heads up 2 days before they need a new program, and you'll hear from them once a month. Like that's not ideal either. You want them to communicate so you can troubleshoot stuff. So one of the things that we actually have done is like, I have a pretty massive kind of like workload on my plate just to manage all the time. And we have one of our staff members, Yas, who's outstanding, and he does a lot of our check-ins. And so like, when I go to write new programs, I've got like meticulous notes from his conversations with them. And sometimes I'll just do stuff in real time where it's like, hey, I'm going on vacation. They're not going to have a trap bar. What should I do instead? Or something like that. And those things are really like easy to do in real time. So it just allows me to focus a little bit more on the things that I'm really good at and not spend as much time, I would say, stuck in tech support, because I do value those relationships and I enjoy talking with those people. But I think the longer I've been at this, the more I realize that like if you let it happen, you can spend all day on the phone dealing with administrative stuff. HR is a really big one. Like I never thought we'd get to the point where like we're actually going to need like an HR department. But just like keeping track of staff vacation time, stuff like that, it's a monstrosity when you actually get to this really large staff that, if you have 2 or 3 people, it's like really, really easy to, hey, if I'm not here, you have to be here. Like it works that way. But it grows so much over the course of time. Like you have to really put time in it. So I think that's what I would say is schedule check-ins. Don't wait for them to happen. Like actually over communicate, create systems also that are going to work when you don't just have one client, when you've got 100 clients. Like how are you going to be able to scale this over an extended period of time? But to be honest, like we could have done a lot more in the distance-based consulting space. We it's not that we didn't do it, we chose not to double down on it. I think we do a good job with it. I'm pleased with the results. That problem is, I think when you want to do it at a larger scale, you compromise a lot on quality. I don't want to write programs with AI. I want to, have a human relationship and all that stuff. And if it means we leave a little bit of money, on the table, I'm okay with that, because we walked away from a lot more lucrative offers than just that. So I'll sleep just fine knowing that we made that decision.
I think a lot of people miss the mark, that they don't understand how many things are inherent in local training, right? I mean, you know when somebody's coming in, what environment you're providing for them, the equipment that they have available. You get to manage everything from load to tempo. Whereas, I mean, from afar, there are a lot of those things that are kind of left at loose ends that, I mean, and again, if you're talking about kind of the callback to the Yankees and the brand, it's like, well, I mean, your name's still kind of on it, regardless of how they manage the program from afar.
Yeah. The other thing I'll tell you too is I think it got, it's a little bit sensationalized. Maybe it was, the COVID impact and all this stuff. I know a lot of people that are online only trainers who hate their jobs. They hate staring at a computer all day. They're lonely. They don't feel like they're getting better. They feel like they're kind of a slave to it. Even though they can travel and do the job wherever they, um, I think a lot of those people that thought they were introverts that were going to like thrive with just sitting at home on their computer, like working next to their dog all day. I think it's a lot harder than you realize. I think you've seen some of those companies that have chased it pretty hard. My wife was like joking, like, because I actually got back into playing tennis this past year. Like that was like my big thing. I was a tennis player growing up, and I've always said whenever the day comes that I retire, like that's what I'll do. And I have a guy who's, pro tennis player that we train with, awesome dude. That's been like kind of like a real highlight for me. He's playing the Australian Open actually tomorrow morning, the second round. So I'm like, I'm following tennis closely. I'm around. I'm like, I'm going to get back in play. So I get out there and, dusting the rust off a little bit. But so I was around it. And, one night my wife was just like, hey, it's good to see you find a hobby. I'm like, I guess you're right. Like I hang out with professional baseball players and listen to rap music for 7 hours a day. Like I really don't need to have a hobby. Like I kind of live most people's dream a little bit. So, it's one of those things where I think that's kind of like it's a side benefit of being in person with people and just kind of taking advantage of the environment and stuff like that. As you don't have to necessarily seek out an outrageous social life because it kind of finds you in that world. And there's a lot of, busting each other's chops and messing around and cracking jokes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say that most, I mean, you and I have known each other through my kind of varied business stuff and getting to the point where we needed HR type of
Yeah.
and everything else. And, I spend more of my time professionally now working from home, but then my outlets, all this stuff that like coaching this team and coaching that team. And yeah, I mean, I think that, going and being around that, you can kind of double dip a little bit. And, I don't know that I've got an abundance of time being baseball coach / chauffeur and then go pick up golf. Right.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't really interest me. I know that sounds terrible to say. Like I stopped playing fantasy football, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. I think I'm very type A. Like if I'm going to do something, I need to be really all in on it. Like that's why tennis was good. I literally just booked an hour lesson and I told the guy, I was like, listen, I have an hour. I want to get better at tennis, but I need to leave here exhausted every time. So can you just drill me into the ground while we're doing this? And it's been great. Like, it's something that's been a good fit. But, it's funny you I mentioned it a bunch. Like the other thing that I kind of mentioned offline that's a big goal for this year is building out our administrative piece of the facility. I think you start a facility, you're trying to like, hey, I want the best tech, I want the best training, I want all this stuff. You never realize if you have all that stuff and all these customers come, like someone's got to handle the administrative. Well, somebody's got to bill, somebody's got to schedule, got to do like, lead conversions when they call to ask like, hey, what hotel do I stay at? What airport do I fly into? All that stuff. And that's really been my wife. She's like kind of front and center and all this stuff. So, we're very much looking for like like a director of operations, a complex coordinator, something in that vein, someone who understands like really the administrative sides, and not just running a gym, but running a gym with like several different revenue centers, massage therapy, physical therapy, hitting, pitching, all that stuff. So if that unicorn is out there listening, I'd love to hear from you. See if you want to move down to beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida.
Well, we'll make sure we get this deployed out everywhere we can.
Love it.
Well, man, I know that time's precious, and I've had the good fortune to have you here for about an hour here before pre-recording. So, we'll wrap it up here. And, as always, like if somebody's watching this, they probably know where they can find you, but let's go ahead and put that out there one more time. Where can they find you if they want more Eric Cressey in their life?
I appreciate it. It's just ericcressey.com or at Eric Cressey on most of your social media platforms. But appreciate you, man. It's always fun to catch up and hear what's new in your world and throw some ideas around.
Awesome. Well, thank you as always. And hopefully I can kind of make a jaunt down that way when I get to head to Florida here in the spring. So
let's make it happen. Long overdue.
All right. Thank you. See ya.